Give it up for Professor Kaba.
All right. My family. Thank you, brother. Thank you, brother. I appreciate you.
Before you say anything, I want to bless you with something. If you guys look around, you see people that's influenced to me. That's Mama Pill, Erica Badu, Lisa Left Eye. We got KT, Dr. Sebi, Victor, Nipsey Hussle, Dick Gregory, Bob Marley. And on this side, we got, I'm starting with my wife, my beautiful wife, Wendy Williams, and we got Queen of Four. My brother came in here and he was looking at the portrait, and I was telling him I would be honored for him to come, so I want to present you with something for you to sign for me. You got to stay here.
All right.
So a lot of times we actually do stuff for people that are not here, so this is my way of presenting somebody that can still hear me in this physical form.
Yes.
So I want to say we honor you and thank you for everything that you do for us.
Brother, thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Anytime, brother.
All right. No doubt. Good, good.
Without further ado, here you go.
Wow. I'm trying to get over that.
Yes. So I need you to sign it for me before you leave.
Yeah, oh, no doubt. Okay. No doubt.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Peace, family. Hotep. Thank you for coming out. And thank you for all that you do. And I just want to say this is really, for me, it's a special event for me. And it's special because of what our brother, Dr. Sebi, our ancestor, did for us. And one of the things I've come to realize in having sat at the feet of so many of our brilliant, who are now ancestors, is that sometimes we get caught up in the messenger and we don't quite hold on to the message. We name schools and we name streets. We name a lot of different things after them, but we sometimes don't allow their message to really be impactful for us. And my exposure to Dr. Sebi came through my following his court case back in the 80s. And I had a subscription to the foundational Black American newspaper, the African American newspaper known as the Amsterdam News. I used to get it every Wednesday. And I used to follow the court case. And in October of 1988, I read the article that said that he had been exonerated from so much of what they had accused him of. And in my mind, having followed culture, I was a teacher in the Bronx, administrator, and this was in October of 1988. And I remember that when I read that and I saw that, I said, this must be a very special man. To be able to present himself in a way that they just shut it all down. And they shut it down because I believe they realized that if they kept the spotlight on them, people would find out the truth about health and nutrition. They didn't do it because they wanted to. They did it because they had to. And so that next Saturday, I went down to Pacific Street, 616 Pacific Street, to the Herbal Institute, where I met Dr. Sebi, and I continued dialogue with him. And I started to go to him, had my consultation, and got the products that they had recommended, but I wanted more. And so that is where I came in contact with our sister, Dr. Ma'a, who is in Rio Piedras in Puerto Rico, where you would order the cases of the Maya, the cases of all of the different herbs that Dr. Sebi was offering. And I also came to realize how important she was, because it is not behind every great man that there's a woman, it's beside every great man there's a woman. And so to this day, I'm taking Maya now and Nervino, even today, Maya, Nervino. I got some Hot Cakes 21 from Sister Maud. And I have, like I tell people, I drink Maya like an alcoholic drink liquor. I be bending my elbows on that Maya. You know, because the blood is so very important. And, you know, a lot of the untold stories that I'd like to share with you, their importance is the fact that at the time that I was with Dr. Sebi, I was a teacher. I was an administrator in South Central Bronx. I worked for the New York City Board of Ed when they needed a consultant for cultural education. But for the most part, I was a brother that took the bus, because that's how I read the article. I was on the 26 bus going home in the Bronx. Nothing special. I had started doing presentations, but not at where I am now. And so the story I tell is a story of a brother who was just looking for truth, and we found some in Dr. Sebi. For those of you who knew Dr. Sebi, you know that he had his way of being. Dr. Sebi had a very unique personality all of his life. And I remember, I remember just going to his resource center. One time he came in with a bag and he pulled out a bunch of plantains and he started cooking them. And we were all standing around in the kitchen. For those of you who may have been to 616 Pacific Street, you know how it was set up. That there was an area way over to the side where you could go and relax, that had plants, and it was really conducive to peace. And I remember him cooking, and he would take a fork and he would give all of us a plantain as he was finishing them. This was what Pacific Street was for us, you know? And I remember that my experiences with Dr. Sebi as he moved through the process was, he tended to like to curse, to tell you the truth. Okay, he had that kind of language. And as I followed him through the process, one of the things I came to realize was how down to earth he was and how truthful he was. For instance, I went to one of his presentations when he was talking about a thing called photovoltaics. And I said to him, Dr. Sebi, how do you spell photovoltaics? He looked at me, he said, how the hell do I know? You the teacher, you tell me. And so I did my research and I found out how to spell it, P-H-O-T-O-V-O-L-T-A-I-C, and I also realized and came to understand why he was using it within the context. Now, whether or not he knew how to spell it or not, I don't know. But the fact of the matter is exactly how science defines it is exactly how he had placed it in the story that he was telling us. And basically he was talking about the light, heat, and sound energy that is emitted from the sun that comes down to the earth, and it enriches the earth. And he was talking about it in relationship to what the Western world, or the European, had done to planting, where they had the cash crop. And where in the cash crop, what they did was they would just grow one particular crop, be it tobacco or cotton or whatever it was. And in so doing, this action depleted the nutrients of the earth. And he spoke of what indigenous people did. And he talked about the fact that, for instance, it's called the Three Sisters, where you have corn, you have squash, and you have beans. And let's just paraphrase the story. The corn, when grown, not only grows a good crop of corn, but it also prepares the earth for the beans to have a good crop. And then the beans come in and they grow, and then they create the proper earth for, let's say, squash. The squash come in and prepare the earth for the corn. So each crop enriched the earth through the sun. When the Western world came in and they began to grow just one crop, they drew the nutrients out of the earth And it wasn't until another black man by the name of George Washington Carver came and freed the soil to bring it back to the nutrients that it needed. And this was the story that Dr. Sebi was telling us. And as I began to realize what Dr. Sebi was doing, he introduced 3 words to me. I already knew the words, but I just never knew them in the context in which he gave them to me, which taught me something about when I'm talking to our people or when I'm talking to children. To always be able to use your words very carefully to understand that they may already know those words, but they don't know the words the way in which you have put them together. And the words was African bio-mineral. And when I got those 3 words in place, I came to realize, as Dr. Sebi would teach us, that there's only one dis-ease, and that is the accumulation of mucus, which over time will harden. And in the hardening of the mucus, it creates a tumor. And then the tumor will create the kinds of problems that we have. In the book by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, How to Eat to Live, there are things that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad says that I think is very important in terms of not only what we eat, but how we eat and when we eat. There are certain foods that are not meant to be in your system at certain times of the day. This society will tell you to have a big breakfast. Well, that's the worst thing you can do. Just by the word itself, you break your fast. Having slept for a decent amount of hours, you break your fast, and what you should be taking into your system should not be a heavy breakfast, because in having a heavy breakfast, what's going to happen is that having that heavy breakfast, you are now challenging your digestive system to be able to supply the enzymes that are going to break that food down when you're eating. And Dr. Sebi taught us that there are specific enzymes that break down specific foods. And so I know we get excited. Let's just say a salad. And we put all those different things in a salad. But what Dr. Sebi was telling us is that there are certain enzymes that break down fruits and certain enzymes that break down vegetables. And I know that we like lettuce and tomato, but you're mixing fruits and vegetables. He taught us that anything with a seed is a fruit, and that the others could be vegetables. And he began to show us in what way we could create a salad. He also taught us to be very specific. Like, for instance, he would say, have no more than 3 things in your salad. You may have a little arugula, romaine lettuce, okay? In terms of your fruit salads, oh, they look beautiful when you have all those colors. Very attractive. But when you mix things that ferment with things that don't ferment, you have World War III in your system. I know that we eat hamburgers and we eat even Impossible burgers. But the reality of it is that when you have tomatoes and lettuce, and then you have the burger, you have onions, you have sauce, you have bread, those are varying things that your enzymes are going to have to break down. And the enzymes that would break down the bread, if it does, is not the same as that would break down the burger, not the same that would break down the lettuce, not the same that breaks down the tomatoes. Very straightforward, very understandable. And so in light of the great work of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in his book, How to Eat to Live, encouraging us to be careful how many meals a day we eat. See, we're on a time schedule here in the Western world. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. In fact, we mark our lives according to breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We wake up in the morning trying to figure out where we're going to eat breakfast, and then where we're going to eat lunch, and then where we're going to eat dinner. And what Dr. Sebi did is he made it very plain for us to understand. how to put together a day of living, how to put together the types of fruits that we should eat, the types of vegetables that we should eat. But as important is what time of day should you be eating that food. And so I came to realize as time went on the importance of knowing exactly what you had to do. And that was Dr. Sebi's gift to us. This is the gift that continues as we speak today. He, in his own way, gave us a gift. I've known many health nutritionists. I could go through the list of them. They have contributed to us greatly. And one day, when all is said and done, we'll be honoring them as we honor Dr. Sebi. But the key is we should be honoring them right now. And one of the things with myself, going around doing presentations and being in school systems and working with children, is I used to bring what I learned from Dr. Sebi into the classroom. And you know, we would have activity. Like for instance, one thing that I did with our children, in light of what Dr. Sebi taught us, because our children are children. I grew up a certain way, but once I knew better, I did better. But until then, and until someone could convince me, don't eat Hershey almond, okay? Don't eat salt and vinegar potato chips, okay? Until someone could convince me against my own interest, I was kicking them. And so what I used to do with the children is I got a book on all sorts of chemicals, particularly food chemicals. And I would have them bring in their favorite snack. Chips, Doritos, they went wild for Cheetos. Three Musketeer, whatever candy bar they wanted to bring in during snack time, bring it in. And then what we would do is that we would put the wrapper, and I'd take out my chemical book and I'd let the children look up what blue and 5 and 6 and 8 and 10 mean. And that is when children began to see exactly what they were putting in their bodies. And that's not to say we shouldn't do it today, because I grew up judging a city by their ribs. Okay, I used to kick some spare ribs in my time. The last thing I was kicking at Crack Donald was chicken fajitas. But once I was exposed to Dr. Sebi, unlike the books that I had written, I read a book by Michael T. Joseph. It was titled AIDS, Animals in Digestive System. He was an accountant that worked on the second floor and looked down on a slaughterhouse. He worked in a slaughterhouse. He was an accountant. And he looked down and saw what happened on the floor of the slaughterhouse where he worked. And he wrote a book on what he saw. And after that, I said, can't handle this no more. I could not eat properly anymore. But it wasn't until 1988 with Dr. Sebi that I cut it off. It was done. No more. And it was in 1988 that I began to realize, as I moved through the process and got spiritually in tune with nature, the reason why I am a vegetarian today, the second reason is because of the damage it may do to your body. But the first reason is a spiritual reason. Because I know that I have enough food out here that I can eat, that I do not have to kill an animal to satiate my hunger. Not to mention, of course, when Dr. Sebi would come through and say, when you're hungry, you're not hungry. Your cells are craving oxygen. And the things that you eat will either satiate or suffocate your cells. And that starts the process of the building up of mucus, that starts the process of tumors or any of the other diseases that we may have. It made all the sense in the world. And yet there are people that are spending inordinate amounts of money doing things that if they just simply modified their behavior, it would change. I see all these different diets that people are going on. All these different things that folk are willing to spend all this money on. And all you have to do is modify your behavior. And that's what Dr. Sebi laid out for us. He said that in your body, you must keep your blood clean. And so that was Maya. He said, as you go through life and the stresses and strains of your life, you need to be able to control your nerve cells. So he had Nervino. He said in life there are external and internal organisms that will invade your body or get inside of your body or live inside your body, and you need something to strengthen up your immune system, which was Bolo. And he said the problem is what goes in must come out. And for those of you who have done the cell cleanser, you know what I'm talking about. You got to carry a commode with you where you go. Or make sure a commode is at least 2 steps. Because when you be dealing with that, nature don't knock, it bulldozes down. Where you better be close to something. Or just get adult Pampers. Because that stuff will clean you from head top to shoe. And then the other thing that he said to us was the fact that we think that colonics is all that you need. And while colonics do serve a purpose, they only deal with a certain part of your body. He said you got toxins in your fingers, you got toxins in your brain, you have toxins in your legs and in your knees. Any place that you have cells, it is possible to have enemy agents attempting to overcome that area. It made all the sense in the world to me as a teacher and as an administrator. And the way in which Dr. Sebi presented the information to me was so clear and concise, humorous, could also invoke anger. Every type of facial expression you could have, you could experience when Dr. Sebi was talking to you. Happiness, sadness, anger. And Dr. Sebi could take you like a captain on a ship through all of those different emotions. And at the same time, at the end, make you realize it's going to be all right if you just love yourself. And this is the message that Dr. Sebi, Sister Ma'at, Dr. Sebi's family, and all those that were in the top echelon of doing the work that Dr. Sebi and Sister Ma'at and others were saying. Because so many of us spend so much money on all these herbs. Even if you get Dr. Sebi's herbs and you take them, it means nothing if you don't have one thing, which should be what catapulted you in the first place to want to do something better for yourself, which was self-love. You, each and every one of us, has to love ourselves. People look in the mirror and say, I hate the way I look. That's not how you should say it. You should say, I love how I look, but I know I can do better. And then just do better. You have to love the width of your nose, the size of your lips, the melanin in your skin, the kink in your hair. When you look, you got to love that. And really love that. Thank you, my sister. Appreciate it.
Of course.
You have to love that and mean it. That's the message that my teacher, Professor John Henry Clark, gave me, was love. And to understand that, in fact, when I first met Professor John Henry Clark, when I was 12 and a half, some old heads brought us up to Harlem, and Dr. Clark was speaking. And at the end, they brought the younger people up to the stage to meet him. And my name at the time was Booker T. Coleman, Jr. And when I was introduced to Dr. Clark said, oh, you're going to be a great teacher one day. That wasn't on my mind. I wasn't even thinking about being a teacher. I wanted to be an astronaut. There's a lot of things I wanted to be, but being a teacher was not one. I knew of Booker T. Washington. My father was senior, I was junior. My father's from Tuskegee, got family from Tuskegee and Marion, Alabama. So I was well aware of Booker T. Washington, particularly with Tuskegee Institute, but being a teacher was not one of the things that I was thinking about. But Dr. Clark gave us a homework assignment, and I'm gonna give the homework assignment to y'all. I'm a teacher, I gotta give you a homework assignment. And the homework assignment was to go home, look in the mirror, and tell the person that you're looking at, I love you, and mean it. Dr. Clark said, because if you can't do that, there is nothing anyone else can do for you. And as I've matured over the years, I've come to realize exactly what Dr. Clark meant and the importance of teaching our children to look in the mirror. Even when I was growing up and, you know, our 3 children, I used to look in the mirror and throw kisses at myself just to let them see, you know, the demonstration of I love me, you know. This is what we got to do for the children, to let them, because when they go outside, whether we realize it or not, you know, we all went through it. You are bombarded with every evidence why we should hate ourselves. We're primitive, we're backwards, and we ought to be thankful that they stole us from our house, enslaved us, made us work for free, and before you come ask me for reparations, you need to pay me for on-the-job training I gave you because I gave you a trade. This is how bold and crazy and berserk these people are. And so we have to keep the legacy of our brother Dr. Sebi alive, and all those that handle his products, Sister Ma'a here in Brooklyn, to support Get That Hot Cakes 21. Little did we know that HC21 was going to come just in time for this thing that they call the pandemic. Great. You got to get your lungs in place. You have to keep your lungs clean and clear, because that's what makes you breathe. That's a cosmic reality. Stars have lungs, not like ours, but they have lungs. They breathe, they live. Their respiratory system is very important here on our earth. As we watch California and Canada, parts of Brazil go up in flames. When a forest goes up in flames, the earth contracts lung cancer, because forests are the lungs of the earth. And so we have got to begin to realize, and this is why at 616 Pacific Street, the plants that were in the room down the way, when we used to come in and just sit and chat with each other, was so very important. The relationship, the symbiotic relationship between plants and humans and animals is very real. It's symbiotic, it's beautiful. When you stop and think about it, the creator of all made it possible for plants to take in carbon dioxide and give off oxygen, and that we as animals take in oxygen and give off carbon dioxide. It's a symbiotic relationship. It's a phenomenal relationship when you stop and think about it. Very straightforward, very simple. But that's what made Dr. Sebi so important to us and the work that he did, because he broke it down. He, like Malcolm, made it plain. As an educator, one of the things I've come to realize is that the greatest educators are those that take very complex issues and make them very simple. And I've come to realize that teachers that take simple concepts and make them complex are doing it because they really don't know what they're talking about, and they're afraid if they told you the truth, you realize that they don't know what they're talking about. And so school becomes very adversarial. And because of just the breakdown that Dr. Sebi and now Sister Ma'at give to us in terms of health and nutrition, working with our children makes it so easy for us to be able to understand. As an educator, I was in South Central Bronx for 31 years, 3 months, and 15 days. Oh yeah, I count days and months. They pay me. My retirement paid me for days and months. 3 months is a quarter year, and 15 days is 3/4 of a month. I taught college for 14 years. And I used to do a presentation with my students thinking about Dr. Sebi. And this was the turning point in every one of my, and I checked it out because, you know, I taught 15 classes because I taught in the evening for 15 weeks, that was the term. Close to 3 hours a class. And I always wanted to see, everything I've ever done in education is to see where it fits so that I could come and speak to good folk like you and to tell you how the system works. In other words, I'm the spook who sat by the classroom door. I studied it very carefully. I came to understand how it operated. And I began to see certain things as it began to develop. So with my college students, what I did is I would talk about something, and they never knew when I was going to talk about it. And what I would do is I would talk, normally it would be around the Misgiving holiday, or it would be around the so-called Easter holiday, because I know this is where everybody starts eating a whole bunch of stuff. And I would talk about pork. And I remember Dr. Sebi telling us a story one time. And I mean, he really delighted in telling this story. And he used to talk about, yeah, man, you know that ham that y'all cook? You know, you cook it real good, don't you, right? Yeah, you put it in the oven, you put it in there, and all of a sudden, you put it with water, and all of a sudden, you take it out, you start to baste it, you start taking the liquids that are flowing off of the ham into the bottom of it, and you go down in there and you bang, and then you put it, you spray it all over the pork, okay? He loved telling this story. And so did I, because I knew where I was going to end up. And I knew what I was about to do to them. I say, yeah, that ham, boy. And all that liquid, actually, if you open up the oven door, you can literally see all those liquids that are just coming out of the side of the ham. Everybody liking the story so far? Yeah, I know. Yeah, okay. And I say, then after you did that, everybody gets together, says a prayer, and that's good. You better pray it don't kill you. But you say a prayer, eat the food, but you got some leftovers. So you put it in the refrigerator. Okay? The next day you wake up, you're going to get that ham sandwich or that ham and egg. Yeah, everybody's good. They're smiling just like y'all are. Everything is good. Yeah, we're going to do this. I say, yeah, you get that ham. I said, but okay, put the pan up on the stove for a minute and look at what you see underneath the ham. What do you see? Well, it's the gravy that was the night before. And I say, yeah, that was the gravy, but it's white. Why is it white? And they say, well, it's the gravy and the cold froze it. I said, yeah, that's true. But what is the white thing that when you put it back in the oven and you cook it again, it's going to break down into the brownish gravy that was before? What is that white that happened when it got cold? I say, it's pus. Because the whole time that ham was cooking, all the toxins were leaving it. And when you thermonucleically do anything, because we're going to break science down. When you thermonucleic heat something, it goes through different manifestations. But when it gets cold again, it returns back to its original. You didn't see that it was white pus when it was coming out the ham. But the next morning, when it was in the refrigerator, it turned into pus. And in that pus, you are now eating pus. And then I'd say, you know, when you see somebody with acne and they have a big bump and it's white on the end and it busts, I said, that's the same thing that you're eating. It's like if that person's bump had busted, you could actually kiss them and suck the pus out their face. Oh, man. Listen, let me tell you something. People would come back and they say, my abuela want to know who you are. Because she said, you better eat my pernil. You better eat my ham. I don't care what his name, Professor Kaba, I don't care what Professor Kaba say. I'm going up there, I'm going to talk to him. Everybody wanted to talk to me because when I told that story the way I told it, it did the same thing when Dr. Sebi told the story. Because when folk realize what it is, once you know better, you do better. Now, some students said, I'm going to eat it anyway. Okay, that's good, you can. I didn't tell you that story for you not to eat it. I told you that story so you know what you're eating when you're eating it. And so, it makes it so simple when you deal with science and what Dr. Sebi was telling us. And the importance of understanding that as we move through this process, as you look at what's happening around the world, I know there's a lot of people who don't understand global warming. There's a lot of people that want to blame humanity for global warming. Global warming is real. Humans didn't create it, but we made the after effects of it worse. We have poisoned the earth, poisoned the water, and poisoned the air. We have put things up into the atmosphere that has opened up holes that allow harmful rays of the sun to come in and to do damage to human skin. But the reality of it is that global warming was coming all the while. And when you are of a people that have been around this long enough, then you understand, because you've been around the cycle enough to know what you're experiencing. But the people who are making the rules now were not around when the earth went through cycles. They're new. The people that we call Europeans are no older than 8,000 years old. They were Africans that moved out of, transmuted themselves. They lost their pigmentation, their hair texture changed, their body length changed in ice, a place that Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop calls the zone of confluence, where the north and the south meet, which is basically the 51st parallel. And what they did in the ice was to survive. And in the attempt to survive, they ate things that should never have gone into their mouth, but they were trying to survive. These were Africans, by the way, because there's only one race on the planet. And that's the human race. And the human race was conceived, born, nurtured, sustained, educated, technologized, brought to higher levels of consciousness in Africa. The original human family are the Africans that we know as the Twa Mbuti or the Khoisan of Central and Southern Africa. This is why I know that we all go and try to do our ancestral lineage and find out where we come from way back then. But if every human being that does any type of DNA search does not end up in Central or South Africa, it's a scam. Because all of us belong to the Twa Mbuti people on one level or another. If you backtrack the human family, you're going to find yourself there. It's very simple, very straightforward. And after these Africans, who began as hunter-gatherers, they then began to fish, then they began agriculture, and then through that came the technologies of studying the heavens to know what time it was and to know what season you were experiencing in order to grow the types of crops that would be best for your system and your body. I loves my watermelon. I get my watermelon with seeds from 139th Street and Malcolm X Boulevard, the health station. I just bought one last night, almost the size of that couch. I cut that up and I eat that. It's another thing that Dr. Sebi taught us. Watermelon is one of the most perfect foods you can eat. It has everything that you need, from the liquids, from the water, to the actual meat of the watermelon. And I like to eat the seeds too. You know, because the seeds is where the watermelon came from. I be chewing on them seeds. People be spitting them out. The reality of it is, family, Dr. Sebi made it very straightforward for us. And we ought to ensure that we keep his legacy and what he taught us to be very real. And no matter what it takes to make sure that we understand that what goes in must come out. For those of you who are of an age that you remember, you wasn't getting out the house. In the Caribbean, in Africa, parts of the South, and even parts of the North, you wasn't going nowhere. Because grandma gonna ask you, are you regular? Now, we don't ask that question to children, no. They say, well, that's nasty. But the reality of it is they don't realize if you are not purging your system of what you're putting in, it stays in there. And for those that enjoy eating bread, okay, that's a real powerful glue when it gets in your intestines. It locks in the things that you're eating. And so therefore it becomes very challenging. And so we eat all this food, but we don't purge it. And so when I'm telling you about that cell cleanser, or if you take the Bio 1, Bio 2, when you get all up in that, that goes like a scraper And it scrapes all of the paste off your internal intestines. It just scrape it up and let all the toxins out. Okay? And that is the strength of this. And our children have to understand this. Years of eating all of this food and not purging it is creating a toxin in your system that later on will visit you. Because as you mature, your metabolism changes. And I know it's not always easy to accept, but the exercise pattern that I had when I was 20, I didn't have at 40, and I didn't have at 70. My body could do things at a younger age that you got to be careful as you start to mature. You have to keep an exercise pattern in place, but you have to understand that your body is going through a metamorphosis. And just as it came in, it's going out. And you adjust it so that you can keep that body system, but at the same time understand that don't try to do at 70 what you did at 20. Because your bone going to start talking to you. Your back is going to start talking to you. These were the things that Dr. Sebi taught us. These are the things that he told us. He said it in many different ways. I've heard him say the same thing using every different type of emotion. He could say it and make you laugh. He could say it and make you cry. He could piss you off. He could do it so that he shocked you, and he could do it so that you wondered, wow, I never realized that before. That's a master teacher who can use all of his senses to be able to get a message across to a people that he loved and wanted to make sure that you understood the breadth of what he was saying. And you know, my brother Mr.G, what makes this so powerful is that here we are in 2023, and we still call his name. We still understand what he offered us. We still know and understand what it is that he has to do. And one day a documentary will be made of him that will really show what Dr. Sebi did. For people like each and every one of us, something brought you all out. Something that you remember about Dr. Sebi brought you out to want to be here to have a conversation. And we're going to turn this into a conversation soon. Because the stories that I have of Dr. Sebi, the untold stories are those stories that are still yet to be told. And there are stories that it will be you that tell the story. And to understand what it is that he has to do. And to move to the point where we will be practicing what it was that he was telling us. Where we will begin to understand the power of juicing. We'll understand the power of water. We'll understand the power of being careful the things that you put in your mouth. And we'll be careful that even if you don't put something in your mouth that's best for you, make sure you purge it at some point in time. Get it out of your system. And there are ways to do this. And that's the legacy that Dr. Sebi left us. This is the legacy that I gave to our children every day in school. As I would monitor the lunchroom, or I would monitor breakfast for our children. Nutritional staff didn't know any better. They saw a child that was acting right. They would give them 2 syrups instead of 1. Child get happy. Oh, 2 syrups. Now I got all that syrup on my pancake. Not realizing that that's not good. Okay? I remember there was a time that they started putting salads out in the New York City Board of Education. And it was a salad bar. Really nice looking salad bar. But the children didn't eat it. They didn't eat salads. You know? They went for the patties. They went for the meatballs and the spaghetti. And they went for that, but they passed by the salads. And the question is, why did they pass by the salads? Probably the adults around them didn't know the value of salad and didn't eat them themselves. When you think about water, when you think about the value of water, what makes water so important? Well, when Dr. Sebi told us that when you're hungry, your body is craving oxygen. This is 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen. You're drinking. That is why they say a half hour before you eat, you should drink water, because that cuts down your appetite. It doesn't cut down your appetite, it satiates the oxygen in your lungs that your body is craving. Why eat green things? Well, green things, plants, they give off oxygen. So you're eating oxygen. And so when you put together a nice salad of arugula or green leaf lettuce, romaine lettuce, and Dr. Sebi would write those lists of do's and don'ts, eats and don't eats. There were things, I didn't know that about carrots when he told me that. I ate carrots. I enjoyed carrots. Well, I enjoyed spare ribs too, so that tells you something. I enjoyed chitlins. I enjoyed cold pig feet, pickled pig feet. You know on the bars where they have the pig feet up on the bar like that? Hot pig feet, ham hocks. Come on, I was kicking it. All of it. On New Year's Eve, you could not go out to party without eating some souse. Pig brain. This is where we grew up. But you know something? That is what our ancestors gave us, because they got the worst of everything. And so they made it delicacy. The brothers and sisters could take those spices and make it taste good. So that even to this day, people who come from Japan eat at Sylvia's. The bus drop them off at Sylvia's to eat dinner. Because you ain't come to New York if you ain't had some soul food. But we don't realize that once you know better, you do better. Okay? Eating, as Dr. Sebi told us, is a learned pattern of behavior. Okay? You have learned to enjoy eating bacon. You've enjoyed eating spare ribs. You've learned that. And so what Dr. Sebi did was that he became what is called an iconoclast. Icon is image, and clast is to break. He broke the image of what we were eating. He made us all look at the plate of food that we were eating. Not just what was on the plate, but how much was on the plate. And the time we were eating what was on the plate. Because it's not just about what you eat. It's when you eat, and it's how you eat it. Dr. Sebi, I've heard this before, but Dr. Sebi was the one that broke it down, that said, you ought to put small pieces of food in your mouth at a time. You know, people be wolfing food down. You know, you get a burger, half the burger gone, and forget about a haunted castle. You go to haunted castle, that whole burger in your mouth. Okay? That's not the way your system's supposed to work. You're supposed to take what they say should be the top of the digit of your smallest finger, should be the size of the food that you put in. But when they give you a half an hour or an hour to eat, you gotta wolf it down. It's the way the system works. Those folk in Mexico got the right idea with the siesta. They eat, take their sombrero, put it down over their head, and rest for a while. Because you're gonna rest anyway, because that itis kick in after lunch. You know, Dr. Sebi used to say, okay, here you are. First thing is, alarm clock is going to go off. Okay? Now that shocks you in waking up, which is the worst thing. That's the worst way you can wake up. Our ancestors knew that the sun would wake you up. And in the sun waking you up, we had a natural clock in our system. Or if we were night-eyed, it would be during the day that we would wake up. And then in so doing, you wake up, you have that heavy breakfast. And then from the heavy breakfast, you go to work. You got to be there by 9 o'clock. And so at 9 o'clock, you're feeling drowsy. Because you had all that sugar from the syrup that you put on your pancake. And then they give you a break. 10 o'clock, they give you a coffee break. You go out, you get your coffee, and you get that pastry with all that sugar. And then, after you have your coffee and pastry, you're on a sugar high. And then by 12 noon, just about when you're going to go to sleep, it's time to go have lunch. And then you have that heavy lunch. You know, you might go to Murder King or Crack Donald, Sunken Donuts, and you have your lunch. Now by 2 o'clock, you're ready to kick some sleep now because itis has kicked in. And then you're off at 5 o'clock. But the point that I'm making is this, family. And this is what Dr. Sebi was attempting to tell us. The cyclical understanding of the African biomineral cycle in our system demands that we understand that productivity, you can have a system such as those in the Caribbean, in Africa, Central South America, the plantations of the South, where if you eat properly, and if you rest properly, understanding the relationship between if you understand metabolism is what you need to understand. And you have to understand that your body works all day long, particularly your organs. It's the job of your body to work, and you're working. And when you're working, you understand that it is your ability to produce the enzymes that will allow you to do your job. So that even if you get up at 7, do the alarm, you have your breakfast, you go to work, you have your coffee break, you have your lunch, may have an afternoon snack, and then you get off, what you have to realize is that you're not being productive because your mind is at a steady pace of being at war with your stomach. Because the foods that you're eating are demanding that your enzymes work to digest the food. Otherwise, you'll get all sorts of different types of stomach diseases, if not indigestion, because it has to break the food down. That's the way the body works. But that same energy that it takes to break down that food is the same energy that's going to have you do your job. And so your productivity is directly related to the foods that you're eating, and when you're eating them, and what it is that you're eating. I'm not a saint. I don't come as a saint. There are times in my confessions with Dr. Sebi, I have to admit, okay, doctor, I'm following you as best I can. Okay, I'm trying. I really am trying. But there are some things that I still enjoy. And I eat them. I still eat them. But the one thing I make sure I do is I purge my system. Even if it may be harmful. I'm working at trying to get as good as I can. But even if I'm not there yet, at least in purging my system, I am getting rid of, or trying to get rid of, as many toxins as I possibly can that's in my body. And to me, that's what's important. And this is the message that Dr. Sebi shared with us. These are the memories that I have when I think of Dr. Sebi and I talk about Dr. Sebi. These are the kinds of memories that I have of him, the untold stories that led me to be who I am and what I was able to do with our children to help them come through. I am on a 100-year plan. A 100-year plan, family. I ask myself every day, where do I want our children to be in the year 2123? When we have activities like this, who's going to be sitting in this chair? Who is going to be sponsoring them? Who is going to be in the audience 100 years from now? Who is going to be doing this? Because that's what they do. They who would wish to oppress us foresee a future. And they put things in plan in order to make sure that their plans come true. And up until this point right now, they've not been successful. And the way you know they have not been successful is because of how dramatically disastrous they're creating this society that we're living in right now. Okay? Africa is waking up. Niger done walked the French ambassador out of the embassy. They turned off the water and the air conditioning and walked the French ambassador out and said, don't come back. Burkina Faso Okay? And there are other nations also, a lot of work to be done. I'm not saying everything is perfect. But what are we doing? And what are we doing as it relates to the health and nutrition? Because I don't care how much knowledge we have in our head. I don't care what we have. If our body is sick, ain't nothing gonna happen. We have to become aware of our bodies. And we have to understand our biorhythms. That's another thing. My biorhythm, I was either in school or taught school the first 55 years of my life. It wasn't until I retired that I came to realize that I'm a night eye. I operate best at night. My highest point of thinking is between 2 and 4:30 in the morning. And just like we need sunshine, we also need starshine. Some of us operate by stars. Astronomers, when you look at the ancient astronomers in Kush Kemet, the Dogon, the astronomers did not operate during the day. They went into the Bengera cliffs and they went away from the sun during the day. And they came out because everybody's wondering, well, how could the Dogon see a star that it took until 1971 for the scientific community to understand that there was a little teeny star that our ancestors called Kiziuzi in Sirius? How were they able to see this star? But if you look at the science of the eye, you come to realize you have a hole in the middle of your eye. It's called a pupil. And around that you have an iris. Right now with these lights, my pupil is 1/4 the size of the iris. You know when you're in a very dark room, somebody turns a light on, you got to close your eyes because it's too much light? Well, the reason why that happens is because in the dark, your eye opens up total. It's wide. Your iris is wide. Your pupil is wide open. The pupil relaxes. My bad. The iris relaxes and allows the iris to open up. But when someone turns on a light, when you've been in the dark, you have to close your eye. And what happens during the time your eye is closing is that your pupil will then close down 1/4 the size to allow light to be admitted into your eye so that you can see. The ancient astronomers operating at night, always their pupil was always wide. And in so doing, their eyes were telescopes. And that's how they could see things. Very straightforward, very simple. This is how it is. This is how the eye works. This is how science works. And so the necessary energy that our ancestors got, who were astronomers, they got from starlight. They didn't get from sunlight. So their carbon and their melanin could be activated through starlight as opposed to sunlight. And so the one thing I came to realize once I retired and I could control my time, I came to realize that I'm not a day person. I'm a night person. I operate best at night. I tell people I'm a panther that prowls at night. I move around, my best ideas, the work that I'm doing comes at night. For me to get up at 10 o'clock in the morning, well, that's a struggle. I do it when I have to, but it's a struggle. It goes against my biorhythm. And so when I go away and I'm doing work, I got to get up at a certain time in order to meet my requirements. But when I get back home, I catch up on my biorhythm. And so not only is the idea of the things that you eat, as Dr. Sebi told us, and talking about when we eat it, he focused on time. And he said, in time, it becomes important to understand how you're going to operate in time. And as an elder, we're going to wrap this, my piece up, then I'm going to offer it to you to have a conversation. As I've matured through my life, I've come to realize, and if I could get this into the minds of children, young people, and those who are of age, who have gone through a whole bunch of stuff, you know, The most precious thing you have is time. You can have all the money in the world, lose it, make some more. You can have all the houses, they can burn down, you can build another one. But there will never be another September 13th, 2023 again. And how you spent that day can never be gotten back. Don't waste your time. Understand what it is that you have to do and do it. And understand that there is nothing that you cannot do. All you got to do is put your mind to it. Set your mind to it and do it. And tell the children this. Let them know we're going through some stuff right now, but it's going to be all right. Our ancestors didn't bring us this far to leave us like this. Dr. Sebi did not live his life the way he lived his life for us just to end up sick, ill, mentally distressed, looking for something that we were born with, because each and every one of us is the creator having a human experience. So don't be looking outside for something that dwells within you. So the next time you're looking for the creator, go to the nearest mirror. I watched the creator brush his teeth this morning. I watched the creator wash his face. I watched the creator hoping that he could be able to manage the White Stone Bridge to the Jackie Robinson Parkway to Bushwick Avenue to Halsey Street. The creator was concerned, you know. Because I know what Friday rush hour might be. But the creator made it possible. And family, again, I want to thank you for coming out, because I respect your time. Because like I say, time is the most precious thing we have. And the fact that you would come out and spend this time together to honor this great man, and that I would have the opportunity to become so excited when Mr.G had said to me that he wanted me to come and talk about Dr. Sebi. And the first time I came and saw this place, and he walked me through looking at all these pictures, and he said to me, we're going to honor you. We're going to make one for you. It is an honor. I live through our ancestors. But what I do not do to repay our ancestors. What I do through our ancestors for the children. I don't pay back. I pay forward. Our children, having spent my life with them in classrooms around the world, they're ready. You can see them now. They're ready. And all they need is us as the elders in the song Glory by John Legend and Common. Common says, it's the wisdom of the elder and the energy of the younger. And together we can make this happen. And together we will make this happen. Let the children know it's going to be all right. We got work to do. Dr. King was right. We are going to make it to the promised land. That's the good news. The bad news is, according to our priorities, a lot of us ain't going to make it. I love you, I respect you, I honor you. I just don't have time for you. Because if I told you that train was leaving at 4 o'clock and you showed up at 3:30, ready to get on that train, and some of us showed up at 3:57, you ain't going to catch that train. But that was your choice. You knew it was leaving at 4. You decided, for whatever reason, with respect, I hope you catch the next train. Quite frankly, I hope there is a next train. We are living in very interesting times. And I think that health and nutrition is at the cornerstone to our success for our future. And I think that Dr. Sebi and Sister Ma'at, Dr. Sebi's family, and all those that encourage us to be able to live healthy and move forward, because there are others that are out here doing this same work. You can mix and match. You can bring them together. You can take some of this and some of that. Take the best and leave the rest. It's according to what you want to do. But we honor Dr. Sebi his memory and all that he left us, all the times we laughed with him and got angry with him, shocked with him. He left us that legacy. And that's the legacy that I just want to leave behind for people to know. Because I was shouting that brother's name in 1988. I was shouting that name before he was with Teddy Pendergrass. I was shouting that name while he was with Lisa Left Eye. I was shouting his name when he was with Michael Jackson, calling him the Mountain Man. Dr. Sebi has been tried through the test of time. And now it's up to us to continue his work. So with that, Brother Mr.G, I'll leave it to you. We start a lively conversation. Express yourself. Peace. Peace.
All right, I'm gonna pass the mic around, so you guys, do you have any questions for him? But first, before I do that, Dr. Sebi's youngest son, Victor Bowman, is in the crowd. I just want to salute him. Thanks for coming, brother. He flew in from LA, but it's to come meet you, Dr.
Oh, wonderful. Hotep and peace to my brother Victor. Much love, brother.
I knew you were
I just want to say thank you so much. I see you, I've been around you all my life, so many lifetimes of just knowing the beauty of the importance of the names that you mentioned, Sheikh Uncle Diop, Dr. Henry Clark, Dr. Sebi, yourself. I just want to say that there's too many people that don't know the importance of what it took. Chancellor Williams, I just want to name all of the magic that is us, that nobody knows what. Leo Hansberry, like I can go on and on to say that that's a self-study for me.
Yeah.
And I have an Urban Yoga Foundation I started almost 30 years ago, and this is what I do, and it's what I teach in so many ways. I want to talk about one thing importantly. I want to talk about, like, when I think of the food that we made amazing, and I think of how we still have people who were, who were old, living to 199, who were eating the food that they ate. I also think that they had their feet in the soil. They were in the sun all day. They were purging all of that. So to the beauty of the importance of purging, for them it came in a different way because they were out and could rest with the biorhythm of the sun. Because when the sun cracked at dawn, they're up to work. And when there was no light, they couldn't really do much of that. So the beauty, and I just want to speak about that, what you think about, like, how they managed to just know the natural course of purging and how they just survived. And we can't survive eating the same food and not doing that kind of work, even though that work was hard, but it still just enlightened something in them to be able to purge what they were eating at the time. I just wanted you to speak a little bit on that.
You know what was interesting, my sister, thank you for the question and thank you for your comments. Dr. Jacob Carruthers out of Chicago, when he looked at the way in which the human family developed themselves, he saw that African people, the original people, saw themselves as nature. And so all of the answers that they ever sought in life came from nature. Whereas when the African that went into the northern climate and was impacted by the Ice Age, they took themselves out of nature because nature was very hostile towards them. And so they developed a way of thinking and a way of living that was hostile to nature. And so the Western civilization looks to everything artificial for their answers. You want productivity? You create machines. Our ancestors had machines that complemented their work. They weren't interested in how long it would take to build the pyramids. They followed nature knowing it would get done, but it might not be that generation, it might be the next generation. And so this is why when the pyramid complex, the Meru, were laid out, Imhotep not only put together the math of the step pyramid, He also put together the math of the perfect pyramid, but he knew he wouldn't live long enough to be able to create and perfect the math, so he laid it out for future generations. So it went from the 3rd dynasty with the step pyramid to the 4th dynasty with Seneferu, and then Khufu, and then Khafra, and then Menkaure, to do what Imhotep had envisioned hundreds of years before that. That's why I say I got a 100-year plan. And so when we're thinking about what we seek, it's about nature. This is what, when you talk about having your feet in the soil, this was Dr. Sebi. Sebi walked the earth with shoes sometimes, but his feet were in the soil of nature because of his mind. And that's the key. Nature has your answers. So that when you look at the different herbs that were put together, be they in pill form or in liquid form, it was laid out through nature. And when you read the back of what they're explaining, it's nature. Nature supplies us. Yoga is simply the ability to keep your body moving metabolically. Don't let your body, you've got certain liquid systems. Bile, phlegm, hormones, blood. You got to keep them moving. When you stop exercising, you dry up. You get arthritis, osteoporosis, rickets in children. Yoga allows you to always stay flexible. And in staying flexible, it allows your body's rhythm, the liquid systems, to be able to travel through your body. When you sit down too much, you create cataracts in your body. Okay? And so when you create cataracts in your body, what begins to happen is that there's a stoppage in terms of all of the different flows of your blood, the flow of your phlegm. What brought the human family into this higher level of thinking was when they went from Homo habilis to Homo erectus. And this ties into yoga too, when you stop and think about it. That's my granddaughter, Kika, that's my sweetheart. You see, and the thing about our children, my grandson is in the back. The thing about our children is we always tell people, you come, but don't bring your children. But this sweetheart is picking up vibrations from all of you and from all of us. And it's very important to bring the children with us. As a teacher, I have been around children long enough to know that in having children around, I can focus in on what the adult is saying. The child doesn't have to necessarily distract me. Some of us, because of our feelings towards children, we can be distracted. So therefore, we spend more time looking at the child than we do what the adult is saying. When we were within our own nation, we allowed our children to move around. We allowed our children to be able to do this. And it didn't distract us. But we're in a Western civilization that's very different from the way in which we grew up. We don't want them to hurt themselves. Because Grandpa got his eye on her. Anything go down, I'm ready to move. Okay? But the idea is simply this. We have to bring our children with us. To have them involved in this. Because we are going to bequeath to them the legacy that we have. And so years from now, Kika and Caress will remember me here. But more importantly, they'll remember you. And the energy that was produced in this room, the words that were spoken. And this is another very important aspect. So, with that, I didn't lose thought. Homo habilis was the human of ability, okay? But Homo habilis still bent over, walking, okay? Which created cataracts. Cataract here, a cataract is an interruption in the flow, right? Cataracts in the Nile River, it's a rocky interruption. So the cataract was here. The cataract is here at the bottom at my ankle. It's here in my back, okay? And also, because of the nature of my head, there's a cataract up here in my neck, okay? Homo habilis, the human of ability, had created so many phenomenal things. This human stood erect. And from Homo habilis became Homo erectus, or the human that stood erect, stood up straight. When this happened, it opened up and took away the cataracts and allowed the nervous system to be able to flow from head top to shoe stop. It allowed the circulatory system to allow the blood, instead of going through all of these cataracts, these interruptions of the body, it allowed for free flow. But not just that, the brain began to create what we call the frontal part of the brain, which thinking hard, sometimes when you think, you feel like you get a headache. Well, when that happens, it's because your brain is pulsing as you think. And as you think, it's pushing this part of your brain forward. When that happened, it opened up what we call the limbic system in the brain, which is the middle part of the brain, and it also flowered in what we call the neocortex, or the top part of the brain. You have three parts of the brain: brainstem, limbic system, neocortex. In the limbic system, in the middle of your limbic system, you have an area that's known as the ventricular system. You have 4 ventricles. They're like balloons. When we stood up and was able to stand up straight, it opened up the balloons and allowed what is called cerebrospinal fluid to be produced in the 4 parts of the brain. If, as I'm talking to you, family, you are not familiar with this information, I blame your 5th grade teacher. Because my children in 5th grade learned this. They understood this. They knew this. And I explained to them how to think. Not just what to think, but how to think. And what happened is that in standing up straight into production, the mass production of cerebrospinal fluid, it opened up these balloons. Okay? You have 2 lateral ventricles. You then have a 3rd ventricle. And then you have a 4th ventricle. In your 3rd ventricle is known as the vault of initiation. That is where the 3 jewels live. That's where your pineal gland is, your pituitary gland, and what's called the optic thalami. Your optic thalami is like, you have 2 thalami on either side. They're responsible for your emotional growth. The optic is where they meet. In the optic thalami, that gland is what balances your emotion. Let me take you back to Dr. Sebi, because he used to have something for the brain. Still do, right? He has something that you take for the brain, because he said we're all born with a brain tumor. And we have to live to get rid of it. But the idea is the fact that optic thalami, your emotional growth, it balances it. It keeps you balanced in your emotion. Okay? Now, please say again.
Banjo.
Banju? Please explain banju.
Is a liquid that Dr. said you get. It allows oxygen to go to your brain.
Got it. Okay, banju.
It's with autism.
Okay.
Speaking of that, my daughter she wouldn't speak until she was 4. She didn't speak. Started giving her that. She was speaking like 4 months later.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's called banju?
Banjo, yes.
Can I push you to ask you how to spell it, or are you going to tell me what Dr. Sebi told me?
Banju.
Banju? Okay. Okay, I need to get me some of that. Okay, no doubt. I need to get some banju. And so that's your emotional growth. Your pituitary gland is responsible for your physical growth. And your pineal gland is responsible for your spiritual growth. When the Homo erectus stood up straight, think in terms of how perfect this black human was. When you are bent over and you're walking, your psychological visual sight is always what's right in front of you. So therefore, your plans are always what's right in front of you. So you're living in the present, aware of the past, but you're always trying to take that next step. But when you stood erect, it allowed you to look out, and that was the creation of the psychological function of looking into the future to see where you're going. But it also allowed direct sunlight to be able to go into the pineal gland, and there are literal visuals carved into the walls of King Tut's tomb that show you the light heat energy going into the pineal gland of the Pharaoh, King Tut. And so that when you're dealing with these concepts, that is what brought the Homo erectus to become Homo sapien, who is the thinking human, who then brought themselves into Homo sapiens sapien, who is the creative thinker, which I believe, I'm going to tell you this, I believe that there were Africans that had gone to the 7th level, which for those of you who enjoy Dragon Ball Z, We're talking about the super sapiens or super saiyans. Okay? These were people that had taken themselves to a higher level of thinking. These are the ones that the aliens are getting credit for everything. Because they don't want to admit that black folk were that smart, with that ability. For hundreds and hundreds of years, we had ancestors that thought on levels that we right now are not thinking, because our neurons are not connected to think that way. Our neurons, and they purposely make us think on this level, we worried about paying the rent. We worried about, is my child safe in the neighborhood? We're worried about, where am I going to get my next meal from? We're worried about all those different commercials on TV. The pharmaceuticals done took over the commercials. And they telling you about what they got for you because you got this wrong with you, but then they start listing things that you can get if you take the medicine, and damn, I'm better off with the original problem. My heart stopped. But yoga is that ability to allow your body to be flexible throughout life. And there is no reason why what they say is the ultimate age right now, because I'm going to Methuselaize this. I don't plan on going anyplace. It is very possible that our ancestors lived many, many more years than what we're doing right now. There is no reason except your body give up that you should ever have to join the ancestors. But you got to eat the proper things. You got to think the proper thoughts. You got to associate with the proper people. You see? And now we're into this, a lot of the stuff on the internet, the things that you're reading, keeps people in a permanent state of depression. And that's why I say, tell the children it's going to be all right. We got work to do. There's no question. We got work to do. A lot of work to do. Dr. King was right. We got difficult days ahead. But come on, black folk, we always had difficult days ahead. We've always had. People talk about, well, when did this happen? When did this happen? Well, we were born into it. Yes. When was it not happening? Everybody saying, what happened to democracy? Dr. Clark used to say there's two things American and the Western world never was. They never were Democrat and they were never Christian. They wouldn't know a Christian if they tripped over it, and they wouldn't know democracy if someone wrote it out for them. And so we as a people have to begin to look at what is it that we're going to do, because their time is up. Their time is up. It's just a matter of us getting ourselves together, because it don't make a difference what happened to them. I'm concerned about what's happening with us.
Drop the mic moment. I didn't want to drop it, so I thought I'd pass it.
Questions, comments? Family, this is our time. This is our time just to get together, have a good time.
I probably don't need the mic, but I was just going to say, I don't really have a question, but I wanted to just give you props for the way you just connect like ancient history with something Dr. Sebi said, to the yoga, it's phenomenal. And I think I speak for everybody by saying that we appreciate your time as well. And we thank you for taking time to come to a community that needs it.
Oh yeah.
I mean?
Oh yeah.
And Mr.G, every time I come, I try to, give him another flower, because he's always he's doing phenomenal work.
Yes, yes.
Victor's here. I tell my friends and my family how amazing this man is. Like, it's crazy. So I'm glad that everybody came here tonight.
Yes.
Also, for me personally, I also wanted to make a comment on eldership, because, elders are always talking about, respecting elders, which you should. But, not many elders doing the work, like Mr.G, yourself, and me personally, I'm 26, and everything that I've come into knowledge-wise, I had to teach myself, and then bring it to my parents, hey mom, hey dad, did you know this? Oh, did you know that you could heal yourself? All these different things that I'm coming into. So, just to wrap my comment up, it's just very important to people like me when I see the elders really, really trying to reach back to the youth, or even other elders of their own caliber, and let them know, don't forget the babies. Yeah. Don't forget about the children. We still got a lot of work moving forward. it's not over just because we're in a state of despair, you know. So thank you very, very much.
Okay, brother. Yeah, you know, I appreciate your comments, brother. And you know, the other thing that I'd just like to say, I've been around to be able to somewhat say this, that everybody to get old ain't an elder. We got some seniors who have, for whatever reason, developed a life system that was not conducive to the way in which the Creator wanted us to live. I still love them, but I recognize that some of us have not done the work. When you do the work, you sit on the throne. And when you sit on the throne, what you're doing is you are reflecting the throne for you. I believe we say respect our elders, but I believe that the elders must create a throne to sit on, to be an example for the younger generation, because I want you to sit here. I'm sitting here so that you can sit here. And that's very important to understand. I'm ready to pass the baton. When I turned 55 and I could retire, the salary I was making could hire 2.5 other teachers. It was time for young teachers. It was time for young people to get into the educational system, and then I become a consultant. But sometimes we hold on to stuff too long. Right. Just look at Congress. Hello. Look at politics. Folk are holding on too long. When you sit and stare in space, it's time. Let the elders sit down for all the work we've put in place. Let us become consultants to the younger generation. There should,
just to add
please.
To what you're saying, because also you mentioned people like that. I personally, like, I'm Puerto Rican, so they don't.
You black.
But you mentioned people like John Henry Clark.
Yes.
And I look to these scholars of yesterday, you know, to get a further understanding of what's going on today. So I just think, like, the fact that, you know, they put, because without y'all, you know, there wouldn't be that, there would be a void.
Yes.
And
yes.
So.
Yes. I have a story for you, brother. In Chicago, a number of years back, there was a dynamic brother that was the chairperson for the Black Panther Party. His name was Fred Hampton. They arrested Fred Hampton and put him in jail. Fred Hampton had a cellmate by the name of Chacha Jimenez. And in their conversations, Fred Hampton said, "Have you ever heard of somebody named Don Pedro Albizu Campos?"
Of course.
Okay.
Of course. That's my spirit.
Okay. There it is. Pedro Albizu Campos said, I'm going to try to get this out right. Cuando la tiranía es la ley, la revolución es en orden. Which means when tyranny is law, revolution is order. And Chacha Jimenez, who belonged to a group known as the Young Lords in Chicago, okay, I'm looking at your t-shirt, decided that he was going to return back and he was going to correct the errors of his ways. And he created the Young Lords. And the Young Lords would now come into New York, in the Bronx, and they would set up, they had a headquarters, where on one window was Malcolm X, and the other was Don Pedro Albizu Campos. We must stop fighting amongst ourselves. We have to understand who we are as a people, and how we can take the flavor of who we are as a people and begin to understand and to tie together the Africanness of who we are. Okay? One brother speaks Spanish, sisters speak English, we should speak Kiswahili to each other. If I go to Brazil, my brothers and sisters speak Portuguese, I speak English, we should be able to speak Kiswahili to each other. If I go to Holland, brothers and sisters speak Dutch, I speak English, we should be able to speak Kiswahili. Kiswahili should become the practical language for all African peoples worldwide. It's the largest African language spoken in the world. All the African languages are important. Twi, West Africa, all of them are important. There's no doubt. I respect them all. From Yoruba, Igbo, Hausa Fulani, they're all important. But I think that what we have to do is we have to begin to talk to each other. Spanish was my second language growing up in the community where I grew up in. And when I would have parents of Spanish-speaking background come into my classroom with the children, I say, bienvenidos, siéntase por favor. That would open up the doorway to them. They'd smile on. Now, there are some teachers couldn't go beyond that. But just that alone makes a difference. I come upon a brother who's Muslim, assalamu alaikum. I come upon Kiswahili, Jambo. Language is the doorway to culture. It opens up us to be able to understand who it is that we are and what it is that we have to do. Dr. Sebi was, where was he from? Honduras. Okay, I'm sure he was Garifuna. Say again? I'm sure he was Garifuna, or at least part Garifuna.
No, he was Guillaume.
Guillaume. What is that now compared to Garifuna?
The British side of the people.
Oh, British Honduras.
Yes.
And what was the other side of Honduras?
The Nigerians.
Okay, okay. You know, I had a friend, Margarita Martinez, who worked with us. And she was on the phone in my office and she was talking. And after she got off the phone, I said, Margarita, I'm picking up some Spanish, but I'm hearing some Yoruba up in that conversation. And that's Garifuna. Very strong. When you look at the Caribs, okay? Now, you say he was Gio?
Gio.
With a G? Gio, okay. Good. Thank you for the lesson. You see, you learn something new every day. But that's the key. Let me just tell you something else, my brother, and to the family, in terms of our children when they come to you and they say, why do I need to know this history and culture? Why do I need to know? My grandson and I went to the store and they had Nerfs. And I saw a particular Nerf that I found was very interesting. I normally carry it with me. I don't have it with me today. But it's a slingshot. And what I used to tell the children when they say to me, well, why do I need to know the past? And I would tell them, okay, check this out. You know a slingshot? And you put a projectile in the sling and you pull it back. But am I pulling it back simply to go back? No, I'm pulling it back in order to project it forward. So if you could give me your mind, and I could put it in a cultural, intellectual slingshot and pull it back, the further back I take you, the further in the future I can project you. A prophet is not a psychic. A prophet is just a good historian. Because when you know where you've been, you can interpret where you are, and you can predict where you want to go. So when what you said happens, everybody say, wow, that was some psychic phenomenon. You calling Los Angeles or something? No, I just know what happened in the past. So family, when I tell you that Western civilization, it's over. Stick a fork. It's done. It's done. Western civilization has never been able to maintain a civilization more than 500 years in their history. Starting with the Indo-Europeans that invaded Africa, 525, by 332, the Greeks was up in there. So Cambyses and the Persians, present-day Iranians, only lasted a little over 180 years. From 332, when they stole the Greek African legacy, when the Greeks stole the African legacy, by 30 BC, the Romans was up in there. So now you're dealing with something a little over 302 years or 300, whatever. And then the Romans lasted, some people say 426. I say they started falling somewhere in the late 300s, but that's okay. If give them the 426, add on 30 years, That's 456 years that the Roman Empire existed. And then when the Roman Empire fell, they was in darkness until the Moors came in and brought civilization in 711. And it lasted for over 700 something years until 1492. And again, they stole the legacy that they had learned from the Africans that were coming in to Spain and to Portugal and to Europe. Major universities were started by African Moors, including Cambridge, including the University of Salamanca, including Toulouse in France, and then some of the ones from Cambridge and Oxford too. Some folk from Oxford and Cambridge came to New York and started a university. So on 120th Street, we all so proud to say we the first graduate of Columbia. We don't know we created Columbia University. Maybe not directly, but through influence and teaching. Because when you know your past, you understand. You understand the ties that bind us together as a people. And when I think of Dr. Sebi and all of the things that he gave to us in some of his more humorous times, I think of the ability to know that this brother still lives. His DNA is in each and every one of us. That's why we're here now. His DNA is in our brother Victor, and to all of Dr. Sebi's family, to Sister Ma'a, and to all of his family. The DNA is there. And we have to teach our children the way of the future. And we have to prepare them to prepare those that will be here even when they're not here. Our ancestors thought in the future when they were able to perceive the world ahead of them. And they were able to put it together. And they did it well because they understood the difference between episodic history and holistic history. When you study episodic history, they teach you World War I, they teach you World War II. In Africa, they would have taught you what happened in World War I and what would have to happen so there'd never be a World War II. It's called corrective history. It's a different way of looking at the world. The question is, what can we do so that stuff never happen again? As opposed to just studying it to know what happened. And when we're testing our children, from an ancient perspective, even from a contemporary perspective in the original families, the idea was never, in a sense, like for instance, when you take a test, if you got 100, it goes on top. If you got a 90, it goes underneath that. 80 go underneath that. 70 underneath that. If you didn't pass the test, your paper don't even go up on the wall. So you're a non-person. From my research of how to truly teach children, it's not what you know that's important, it's what you don't know what's important. Because I have faith that you'll learn what you don't know. So therefore, I don't judge you for what you don't know. I judge you for what you took a test, 10 questions, you got 8 correct, you got 2 incorrect. I'm not going to focus on the 8. You're not going to get an 80. I'm going to tell you, look at the 2 that you didn't. Learn the answer. And then next time you take a test, you'll get 10 out of 10. It's all right. That's all right. That baby talking to us. It's all right. It's all right. It's all right. Because if you're going to take that baby out, that means that you're going to go out. And I need you here. This is who we are. This is how we're thinking. We have to change the paradigm, family. We're thinking like the Western world. That baby is the future. Let them talk. If they could enunciate it, baby would probably have a question for me. Because say something ain't clicking, explain this to me. Any other questions or comments? Family, I have, just to tell you what I've brought in terms of my books. I wrote a book titled Spirituality Before Religions. And I wrote this book, Spirituality Before Religions, so that we could understand the basic fundamentals of what existed before religions. We're living in a very challenging world right now. For us to understand how spirituality came into existence and how religion came into existence, all religions from A to Z, from agnostic to Zoroastrian, the theme of all religions is the resurrection of the soul. It is what happens to us after this life. But what our ancestors did was not just get caught up in what happens to us in the next life. They laid out a comparative analysis that the same way you would rise into the heavens after you passed was the same way you would move into consciousness in this life. And so what they did is they looked at nature and they took a caterpillar and they said that the job of the caterpillar is only to eat the proper leaves. That's all a caterpillar does, is eat leaves. That's its purpose, eat leaves. And in eating leaves, they then can spin the proper chrysalis or cocoon. If they didn't eat the proper leaves, then they would not be able to spin a cocoon and they would die out. But if they did, they would spin a cocoon, chrysalis, and inside that chrysalis, over a matter of time, that earthbound caterpillar would become a flight-bound butterfly. And so that was the creation of why they mummified bodies. Because that's what a mummy is. It's wrapped. Okay? And it represents a cocoon. That within the cocoon, this essence that passed away is going to transform itself from an earthbound human to a flight-bound saint, and that's why they had wings. So they could be flight-bound. Metaphor. As it was in the beginning, so is it now, so shall it ever be. That's our proverb they took from us. And as our ancestors looked at the earth, they noticed that when they put a seed in the earth would take it down. And then from taking it down, whatever its seed it was, it would grow back up in time. It would live a life, it would age, it would decay, it would die, it would decay, but the next season it would resurrect itself. That's where spirituality came from nature, studying plant life. The seed that is planted in a woman, where it gestates for 10 months. It comes forward like the plant comes about the earth. It lives. It ages. It dies. The human body decays, but it resurrects itself. And just like the caterpillar ate the green leaves to survive, the same way humans have to live the proper life, the life of ma'at, truth, justice, balance, harmony, order, and arrangement. Which leads me to another book I got back there, which is my favorite characteristic. There was a brother, Louis McLean, from Texas, that said, brother, we're going to do a series on ma'at, the principles of ma'at. Said, we'd like to honor you. Which characteristic is your favorite? And I said, reciprocity. What goes around, comes around. You shall reap what you have sown. And my question to us as human beings is, if we really believed that how we do others would come back on us, if we really believed that as we do for others, if we do it bad, it comes back on us 7 times bad. If we do it good, it comes back on us 7 times good. Would we really treat each other the way some folk have decided to treat some folk? Reciprocity. Treat others as you would want them to treat you. Now let's separate that from self-defense. Okay? Because Malcolm told us self-defense is not violence. It's intelligence. Let's be serious about this now. Okay, me not turn no other cheek. I don't know what that means, because I know the people I'm dealing with going to smack that one too. And then I only have 2 others, and I got to bend over for you to smack that. And homie ain't playing that. From the moment I believe that you are a threat to myself or to my loved ones or to other people, it got to end. Just like when you get a cancer tumor, they take not only the tumor out, but they take some of the good cells that are around it so that it doesn't grow. There are people around us that are human cancer tumors that must be cut out of the human civilization. And we have to be real serious about this as we move forward. There are some people, everybody trying to say, we're going to try to get them to bring their better angels out. I believe that people have angels in them, but I believe that we're also born with a Judas. The Judas convinces you that you're not going to make your divine destiny. Your Messiah makes sure that Judas fails. Judas falls down 9 times, but your Messiah rises 10. Family, I don't know if we realize how great we really are. No, like I'm talking about how great we really are. Really how great we are. To understand what a super sapien is. I've got some webinars and quibinars up on my site. I got some cards back there, family, where I'm looking at a people, whether we realize it or not, family, and particularly our elders. Richard Pryor said years ago, you don't get old by being a fool. You may not become an elder, but you ain't a fool. To live this life, what we've experienced, and still we rise. I try to stay away from superiority and inferiority. I try not to push on that because sometimes people may misunderstand what I'm saying. But we people, darker than blue, we are superior. We are superior not because we're black, but because we are black. Everything that we've ever tried to attain, they tried to squash. Yet in spite and despite of that, still we rose. I go back to Dr. Sebi and the stories that he tells us about what his inflictions were, what he was going through. And where he and Sister Ma'at decided to travel around the world and figure out how they could get rid of some of their own inadequacies, their own illnesses. And they did it. Do you know what it took for Dr. Sebi and Sister Ma'at to rise from where they were to who they became? That's a super sapien to me. John Henry Clark, Shashi McIntyre. I can do libation, sister. William Leo Hansberry. I wrote a book on William Leo Hansberry. I studied his life in Washington, D.C. I worked with Chancellor Williams. 1984. I interviewed him for my book on William Leo Hansberry. He was a student of William Leo Hansberry. Nnamdi Azikiwe, the first Prime Minister and President of Nigeria, was a student of William Leo Hansberry. Kwame Nkrumah, when he was at Lincoln University in Pennsylvania, used to travel to Washington, D.C. to come to Africa House that William Leo Hansberry had created. William Leo Hansberry was known as the father of African students. Many of the Ethiopians that are in this country today go back to William Leo Hansberry being able to make something happen. William Leo Hansberry was part of the group that worked with a lot of folk of African American, Caribbean American descent that fought to get Africans to come to this country. Miriam Makeba was one of them, but there was another man that they brought here by the name of Barack Obama. This is who we are as a people. Everywhere that I study our history, we're fighting amongst ourselves. I've never seen Western civilization be able to conquer us as conquerors. You go back into the Kemetic legacy during the 6th dynasty, we were fighting amongst ourselves. That's what allowed the hybrid to come across. When you get into Hannibal Barca during the Punic Wars, you got to go over to Morocco to look at the Numidian nation. You got to look at Cartadas, that's in Tunis. And Tunis were related merchant-wise to the Phoenicians. Cartadas was a major merchant, very rich, well-to-do. They mistreated the Numidian nation. So what happened? When the Romans came in to do damage to the Africans, the Numidians sided with the Romans, brought Cartadas down. I can take you to the Moors. I can show you in 1492, Boabdil of Granada was fighting amongst not only his own people, he was fighting against his family, his blood. I could take you to the plantations. I can take you to the revolution in Haiti. I can take you to the streets of Chicago and New York and Los Angeles, where we're fighting amongst ourselves. When I've had a chance to be with Bloods and Crips, I make them face to each other. And I say to the Blood, I say to the Crip, I want you all to ask each other a question, a simple question, and I want you to answer it. Are you my true enemy? And then here come Marvin Gaye, when he says war is not the answer. Only love can conquer hate. And now I wrap it up looking at Dr. Sebi, who said the only way you can heal yourself is to love yourself. And that's the bottom line. Before you can love anybody else, you got to love yourself. Michael Jackson said, before I go outside try to do anything, I'm going to look at the man and the woman in the mirror. And what is it that I have to do to make things possible? And I think that with all that we're celebrating as it relates to our brother, Dr. Sebi, this is what he told us, this is what he reinforced. This is why I've said it so many times this evening, is because these are the memories that he tattooed on my brain. We are a great people who will rise by the will of our wills, because Bob Marley say no one can curse who Jah has blessed. And we are doing it as we speak. We're looking at the TV and they're telling us how bad things are for us. But family, I believe we're in a better position today than we've ever been before. And the fact that Mr.G could invite me and my family and you to the alkaline oasis in light and spirit of Dr. Sebi, we're better off now than ever before. Because I ain't never heard of this in 1962. But we're doing it now, because once you know better, you do better. I saw a hand up, please.
How you doing, Professor?
Excellent.
I want to say it's an honor to be here tonight.
Peace,
It's an
brother.
honor. It's an honor. We're all in alignment in this room. I actually met this brother earlier today. I'm fresh in from Chicago. And he was like, I'm going to be at the Alkaline Oasis tonight. Well, I'm coming through too. So it's a blessing to be here. I love hearing you talk. I wanted this to bring back the oxygen, how your cells need oxygen, and kind of expound on it a little more. We are all right now still being sleep deprived, and we don't even know it. And what they snuck upon us was having the technology around us, and we have it on at night. When we sleep with it, we have it in our pocket, it's still in our oxygen. And we don't understand that that's also sleep depriving us. I found this out about 3 years ago when I started having problems. And that helped me to help other people learn the same thing. I even told my brother Victor about it as well. It's this oxygen our cells need it, and that's what we thrive on, that's what we live on, that's how we live through life. But this technology is also, we have to learn how to balance it. Not really stay away from it, but learn how to balance it. Because like you said, all of this is old. It's a repeat. We have to go back in the past to be able to survive what we're going through right now. So we have to start pulling back from all the technology, pulling back from being online or having it on our body, on our person, or sleeping with it, because we didn't sleep with these things before, as we do today. And right now, that has been taking a toll on us. They know it. The elites of the world know it, but we don't know it. And it's not just our people, it's the human race that knows it. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there for you guys. All right? Anybody else have a question?
It'll make us think twice. Thank you, brother, for sharing. You say you from Chicago or brother from Chicago?
I'm from Chicago, you're from Miami.
You from Chicago, you from Miami?
Yeah.
All right, welcome home.
Right.
Peace, family.
Peace.
First of all, thank you, Mr. G, for having this gathering with the family. Since you opened, I've been here a few times and just truly appreciate it. Baba Kaba, thank you so much. I can't believe I'm about to say this number, but I've been on the path of knowledge itself for over 35 years now. And I was fortunate to, and as I walked in, you were talking about how things are not the same. So I was walking around Brooklyn all day today, and now I'm limping in here now because my leg is not as good as it once was. And in walks my referee partner. One of the main decisions I've made from the study of all of the ancestors and the great people like yourself is to keep moving. So I decided long ago to keep, in my older age, do something that I can continue to do. Refereeing was one of them, and synchronicity in walks, one of my partners I've been refereeing for years. So as I'm an educator, and when 35 years ago when I came upon that realization of wow, it was almost as if I walked through a portal from one person to the next, and it just became a responsibility to become an educator. And when you really take that seriously, you look for people to model after. You were one of the most important models for me. You know, I was lucky enough to sit in lectures with Dr. Clark. I was able to meet Dr. Ben. So some of these people are just iconic when you think back about it. And I learned so much, couldn't stop reading enough. And I also know your history of being with the Department of Education. So I know you relate to it. I've been in education in that public school domain for over 15 years. It's been very frustrating, but I'm now working for a school in Brooklyn with students from this neighborhood that we are allowed to design a curriculum that includes you, that includes Dr. Clark, that includes so many of our great ancestors, and really be able to touch these children in our institutions. So I cordially invite you to help us to come to our school, to talk to these children, be a presence for them. Mr.G, I would love to invite you as well. You know, you have such you know, we have school right around the corner from here, so it's something that is so important. You know, it's not even about the money. I'm struggling financially, but it brought me all of the study from this time, way before any of this technology. The gods and earth, we were being psychers and learn from each other and talk to one another and keep that knowledge inside. And we would walk around and talk to people. So, like I said, I could talk forever and just thank you forever. But you know, for the family, these are great individuals. Dr. Sebi, his son, and KT, the arts degree is in the last 10 years, he has transformed my life, and I have now a woman that treats food with the love and care, and it's just a wonderful experience to, over these 35 years, to see how the health has been a dynamic influence in how we can be the revolution. The revolution cannot exist without our bodies being properly charged, being properly energized, and being taught, and being in the presence, like you said, allowing the children in the space, getting that energy from them. It's very important. So, Baba Kaba, thank you so much. You are a great presence. Again, I truly invite you cordially. I've spoken to the partners already, told them I was coming here, told them I would try to invite you to speak to our children. They need you more than ever. So
Oh, yeah.
I try to relay those messages from you and ancestors. I'm so sorry. So, you know, again, thank you. And for the family, peace and love.
Peace. Brother, please make sure you get my card.
Absolutely.
And you know, we'll talk down the line as to how we can do this, because this is what I do. Because I realize, you know, what it is, particularly for our young people, to be exposed. And so Yeah, we'll talk. Please.
Your peace, King.
Peace, brother.
So first of all, this is an alignment for me to be here tonight, because I was actually with Victor all the way to Philly, but we changed our mind to come here.
Okay.
And I already knew about this event beforehand. So in my mind, I was like, I'm gonna miss it because I was a Victor. But Victor, we said, now we're gonna go to Oasis to see you.
Okay.
So let me tell you the backstory of my story. So first of all, I want to thank you for my enlightenment. 4 years ago, I was having a research with you, and that's when my lady that was a Christian background, indoctrination. And once I realized the truth, I had to spill it off no matter what. It's too powerful to deny the truth. So once she heard the real information from me, she wasn't ready for it. And my brother from Chicago, yo, King. Remember I did the speech in Chicago?
Yes, I did. Yep.
So at the time, I was enlightened with the knowledge that you was given. And he saw me do a speech on my story, how I turned alkaline, right?
Yep.
So after that, I just kept learning more with you and everybody else, the elders. And then in time, I went over the house, to my queen's house. She lived with her family, and she was raised with her uncle and her aunt. And they heavily with the Christian indoctrination. So I remember I asked her one day, I asked him, he said, can I ask her a question? I said, it's simple. He said, go sure. He said, who are your ancestors? I asked him. He was scratching his head for like 1 minute. Didn't even know how to answer me. And I remember he said this, well, whatever that Bible says, you got to go and go by that. I didn't say nothing. And from that day on, it was like a tug of war between her family and me. They didn't want her to be with me because I knew the truth. And he knew that. So it was tug of war. And then recently, this April, like 5 months ago, she cut me off. She was like, you don't push me spiritually, and that's because of the family. The family wanted her to be with a Christian person. And I'm like, I don't care what you tell me, I gotta live the truth. I just can't I can't raise my kids, in the bullshit. So I gotta keep it moving forward, you know what I'm saying?
I hear you, brother.
And I just want to thank you for the knowledge. I appreciate you. And this is why we're here. To
Okay.
learn from you. And we're gonna keep on living your legacy.
No doubt. Together.
Exactly.
Together, because you're the generation.
Exactly. Without community, no unity.
Yeah, that's it.
Exactly.
That's it. That's powerful. And to add to your story, brother, about ancestors, like when you want to ask about ancestors, just to think about this. I came upon some information by a group known as Ancestral Footprints, okay, on Instagram, Ancestral Footprints, and the question was, how many ancestors do you have? Okay? And so I did some, I was doing certain things. I was working with a brother going for his PhD in math, far advanced in the mathematical concepts than myself. And I said to him, brother, listen, I want to tell you this. You have 2 parents, you have 4 grandparents, you have 8 great-grandparents. Is there a mathematical formula that would let us know how many ancestors we have? We're talking math. This isn't emotion. This is math. 2 parents, 4 grandparents, 8 great-grandparents, 16 great-great-grandparents. You go on down the line, okay? If we could get that, okay? And he contacted me back and he told me. He said, well, there's no name for it, but this is what you're doing. And he gave me the formula, where N represents your particular ancestral line as an exponent. And so I said, okay, now I'm going to be black. I'm going to be bold. I'm going to make one up myself. And we're going to call it E to the 3. Exponential expansion equation. E to the 3. 3 E's. Exponential expansion equation. Okay, 2 parents, 4 grandparents. You see the exponent is expanding. 8 great-grandparents. Okay, now, brother, if somebody said to me, how many ancestors do I have? I could give them a number, mathematically, how many ancestors I have. If I took you back 20 generations, if we considered a generation to be 25 years, some people say 20, some people say 30, I'll say a generation is 25 years. If I took you back 20 generations to the year 1523, the question is, how many ancestors do you have? How many people existed to bring you into existence mathematically over the past 500 years? 1,048,576 human beings had to come into existence to bring you into existence today in 2023. E to the 3, exponential expansion equation. We ain't getting deep inside, no problem, and I'm not going to cite no books that you have to read to tell you this. I'm going to give you the formula, okay? E to the 3, exponential expansion equation. 2 parents, 4 grandparents, 8 great-grandparents, 16 great-great-grandparents, on down the line, take you back 500 years, you have 1,048,576 human beings came into existence to bring you into existence. And family, I just got one question. Do you think you're alone? Well, let me drop the other shoe, because I only took you back 500 years. Suppose I took you back 5 million. How many ancestors, how many stories do you think dwell within you? Happy, sad, successful, near successful. How many people dwell within you? Do you know what you can do? Do you know your power? You talk about super sapiens. How many super sapiens live within you? Each and every one of you. People that have achieved phenomenal things. People on the plantations that will never know their name. But they did phenomenal things. Yeah, we know the Harriet Tubmans, and we know the Frederick Douglasses, and they all did great things. But what about that brother that refused to go on the Underground Railroad in order to become the person that when the Underground Railroad came through that plantation, they could direct them where they needed to go? They gave up their freedom in order to make other people free. What type of super sapien do you have to be? We're living amongst superficial sapiens. Black folk live in 6 dimensions. That's our problem. We live, Western civilization lives in height, width, and depth. They perceive everything that is right there, three-dimensional. But when you synthesize the 3, height, width, and depth, into the 4th, you then go into the time-space continuum. Black folk live in the space-time continuum. And every time we try to get folk to understand this, that's when they say you're crazy. Hoping that you'll never understand that after you get into your 4th dimension and you ascend into the 5th dimension is when you're walking in light. You see all these people talking about they got this new thing that they've been researching people who have died and come back to life. And all of a sudden now these people are telling their stories about what they experienced when they died, but then they came right back in. What do they all say they're heading towards? They're all heading towards the light. They're being sucked out of their bodies into the light. That's science. That's not personal. I'm not going into the twilight zone with this. That's science. The very nature of your soul. When you were born, your spirit was encased in your tomb called a body. When you die, your spirit is released back into the place from whence it came. My books on spirituality before religion, Shabaka Stone, attempt to delve into it in a way that is not going into the twilight zone. I try to stay in the science. That's why the subtitle of my book, Spirituality Before Religions, is Spirituality is Unseen Science, and Science is Seen Spirituality. It's like 2 sides of the same coin. Spirituality and science, same thing. One you see, one you don't see. But the one that you see tells you the one that you don't see does exist. You just don't see it. And you ain't never going to see it. It's called Amen and Amenet. Amenet is the female. She is the revealed. She is the one that shows you. Amen is the hidden, the one that you don't see. But the revealed reveals the unseen. As long as you know it, as long as you feel it and understand it. And come on, we all go through it, but we don't want to tell people. Don't ever be sitting in a mixed group and say, did you hear that? Because the melanin in your inner ear picks up things that other people don't. There's a book by Jewel Pookrum called Vitamins and Minerals, where she shows you a chart of the various groups of melanation that are able to perceive various concepts as it relates to from the ultraviolet to the infrared to the cosmic rays to the X-rays to the gamma rays. It's science. But if you never know, if you're not in it, you ain't gonna win it. So if they can convince you that you're crazy, then you ain't gonna get into it. Much respect to everybody that practices faith systems and religions. Don't mean you no harm, but that's what religion does to you. It closes your cosmic book. You were born with everything you'll ever need to know and understand. If we shut off the lights, couldn't see a thing. And then all of a sudden you found the light switch, you turned the light on, you saw the lights, you saw the chair, you saw the couch, you saw the throne. My question is, did all those things appear in the room when you turned your light on? No, they were always there. Your light just wasn't on. It's the Akashic records and what teachers do. And my brother who is a teacher that just spoke, the only thing we as teachers can do, we can't turn your light switch on. We can only facilitate your movement towards the light switch, understanding that it does exist, but only you can turn it on. And even if someone else could turn on your light switch, that's a problem right there, because you should be able to turn on your own light switch to be able to see what exists. You were born with every piece of information that has ever existed, that exists, and that will ever exist. All you got to do is turn on your light switch and see it, because it's there. And your ancestors are always talking to you. The question is, are you listening? Always talking to you. There's a difference between being lonely and being alone. You can be lonely in a room full of people, and you can be alone in a room full of people. Sometimes people are afraid to be alone because they are afraid of what they will think within their minds. But once you love yourself, you will engage with yourself and you'll appreciate being alone. Because that's when you can have your conversations, because only you can solve your problems. And have no fear for atomic energy, because none of them can stop the time. How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Some say it's just a part of it. We have to fulfill the book. Bob Marley. All Bob Marley had was a redemption song. It's the last song on his last album. Old pirates, yes, they rob I. Sold I to the merchant ship. You know, that used to be the lullaby that I used to sing to my children as they would go to bed. I would sing, old pirates, yes, they rob I. Sold I to the merchant ships. And as I finished the song and they were drifting off into sleep, as I was leaving the room, I'd say, I'll see you in Africa. The image that you create with the children, the things that you say, the things that you do have such a profound effect. Brother said he's early childhood. Early childhood, I was kindergarten teacher. As a black man in a classroom, I could write a book on the numbers of children that said, you look like my daddy. I wish you were my daddy. Can I call you daddy? To which I would respond, I am your daddy. Because from an African tradition, all the adult males in the community are Baba, and all the adult females are Mama. I didn't bring you into the world, but if you're in my presence, I'm responsible for everything that's good for you. And if ever you want to talk, I'm here. I'll understand if you don't, because it ain't none of my business anyway. Because that's something you should do with your family. Our children are ready. They're born ready. They just become unready when we allow them not to be embraced. When I am on my way, when I came here today, I have to walk down the street and go to my garage to get my car. All the brothers be hanging out. I always address them. How you doing? What's going on? Okay? Don't need to pontificate with them. I'm not going to lecture them. But I respect them. Ra means to see in a spiritual light. Spect means to look. Respect means I see you. I acknowledge you. I approve you. And I just want to know how you doing. Hey, Brother Kaba, how's it going? Excellent. How you doing? We have to bring this back. Don't put yourself in harm's way now, because I know there's another side to this. But what I'm saying is that somebody, and then I'm going to end this segment here. When I used to get into my elevator, I live on the top floor. And coming downstairs, I would encounter people as they would get on the elevator, and I would say to them, hello. That was their response to me, by the way. Okay. Next time on the elevator, day later, next maybe 2-3 days, whenever, I'd say hello. Hello. Next time, hello. Hello. Next time they get on the elevator, they say hello to me. The point that I'm making is somebody has to be mature enough to break down the pain that we feel as a people for all we've been through. Okay? When I was in school with them roughnecks, okay, I always believed that the hardest hard equals the hardest hurt. If you've been hurt enough in your life, you create a coating around you because you don't want to be hurt no more. And you get hard. And so you might come at me kind of hard. Okay. Some of the things they would say, they would curse. I'm not going to curse, but they would curse. Okay. I say, but brother, you know something? When I got up this morning, I was looking forward to seeing you, man. Why are we going to talk to each other like this? Have you ever heard me talk to you that way? Did I ever say that to you? I say, I'm not the one that got you mad. The point I'm making is somebody, and again, don't put yourself in harm's way because I understand there's another side to this. But the point that I'm making is that for those of us who know better, we have to do better. And we have to love our people because by matter of degree, we hurt so bad. We hurt so bad. And as Malcolm said, the most unprotected human in the world is the black woman. And as brothers, we got to protect the black woman. We have to stand with the black woman. Not above, not below, not behind and not in front, beside. I realize also, don't put yourself in harm's way now, because I know we got some sisters, okay? True that be. But somebody has to be strong enough to be willing to deal with that. Same thing with the brothers, hard and all the rest of that. We have been hurt very badly. And the one thing we have to do is turn inward and start to love ourselves, respect ourselves, despite everything. And one thing, please do, forgive yourself. Forgive yourself for all you've done. And the only thing you can do that would be proactive is to change what you can change, but don't sweat what you can't change. Because as you mature, it gets exaggerated. And what might be a little thing becomes a whole big thing, and you just live with that cloud over your head. You have to forgive yourself. We have gone through a lot over these years and intergenerationally. And to understand that, I have a book, Shabaka Stone, that deals with an African cosmic story. Because I was impacted by Dr. George G.M. James' Stolen Legacy, Chapter 8. And I promised myself one day I would write a book. Because that book has all the answers that we need to be able to resurrect ourselves as a people and as a person, as a woman and as a man. In the first grade, I went to, in 83, I was teaching first grade. I went to Kemet with Dr. Ben in 83. I came back, I was so excited. I wanted to teach the children about the Happy River. And I knew a brother on 161st Street near Yankee Stadium that sold oil. And so instead of just teaching about the Happy River, like with maps and things, I said, I'll use a map, I'll use everything, but I'm going to take some oil and I'm going to blend it. And I'm going to tell them about the Happy River, the Blue Nile, the White Nile, and things like that. And so I did that, and at the end of the presentation that I did with my first graders, one of the young brothers asked me, well, can we smell it? And so I wasn't expecting to smell it, I just wanted to teach a class. So I dabbed a little bit on their wrist and thing like that. Next week, I go back to the school to teach the next first grade. The young brother intercepts me and says, my mother wants you to make some oil for her. She smelled that oil. She said, that oil is nice. And when my mother's friends came over, she kept telling my mother's friends, smell that boy. That oil smells good, doesn't it? Next morning when I woke up, my mother was still smelling me. In fact, she woke me up by smelling me to see if the oil was still there. I have an oil back there that I make called Hoppy and Kush. It's the only oil that I make. And it's in celebration of my first graders who gave me a job. Because I sell that oil all in many different places now. And the thing is that I never intended it to be a business. I just had a pure heart. I wanted to teach something to the children. And if that young brother had not asked me, can I smell it, his mother wouldn't have smelt him, and I would not have the business that I have also of making oil. And I've also got some incense back there that I make from the oil itself, Hoppy and Kush. It's the last batch of incense I'm going to make because it's time consuming. And I do each stick separately. Well, not separately, but in the same bucket. So these are the products that I've brought to share with you if you're interested. But also, are there any other questions or comments that anybody would like to make to be able to? Please. Yeah, see, because we said this was going to be, what, from 7 to 9? I'm an African. I'm in a time-space continuum. Time don't mean a thing to me when we were African people. Peace, brother.
Peace, brother. Peace, brother Kaba.
That's I.
Nice to meet you. Thank you, Mr. G. Thank you again. What an amazing event again. Absolutely, a lot of knowledge, a lot of information to take in and absorb. I wanted to bring this to your attention because I heard you're a teacher. I'm going through something with the children right now. My son is going to turn 4 years old by next month. So we don't have him vaccinated at all. So I don't even have him in any school right now. So I'm actually looking to know if there's any school that you guys would advise that I can bring my son that he doesn't have to get vaccinated.
Wow. Please, my sister.
We homeschool our children,
Yeah.
and we just enrolled in a institute here in Brooklyn called Ziax Institute. It's an African-centered homeschool on St. Mark's and Thomas Boylan Avenue.
How do you spell Ziax?
XYAYX.
XYA.
AYX.
Okay. Please. Can
Photoshop.
Photoshop? What? Please explain.
One of my nieces who got vaccinated, I just copied her information to my son.
Oh, I got you. Okay, all right. Yeah, that's another way of doing it. That's another way of doing it.
Check out this brother.
So basically homeschool, because that's what I'm doing right now. But there are no schools currently that you could bring your children to that have no vaccination or anything like that.
Well, I know that under religious or spiritual reasons, you can have your child. And when people ask me, I know one person, Dr. Phil Valentine, that can write the letter for you. Or there are other people too. I just know Dr. Phil because I know him and I talk to him frequently. Say again?
Yes.
Governor Cuomo changed that for religious exemption and all before he got out of office, because in New York, we were able to do that. We don't vaccinate my granddaughter, but then she had to go to Montessori. It's a big deal, it's a big problem, and
There's homeschooling. I also teach for Dr. Valentine's. He has a homeschooling, so I'll be glad to give you the information. So homeschooling is great, but we also need time to reconnect with our loved ones. You know.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
All right, don't worry. I was just asking. Maybe I want.
Well, no, but you have a lot of options now, from Photoshop to. You know, and you know, it's interesting that you say that, because when I think of Dr. Sebi again, I think of prevention and cure, okay? In terms of illnesses that come through the human family. Viruses exist. The idea that Dr. Sebi, Sister Ma'at, my brother Victor, his family, and all others, vaccines, there's two types of vaccines. There's preventative and curative. Preventative is what Dr. Sebi and others offer us. You prevent the disease by taking proper care of your body so that you don't get sick. The curative is what they're going to put on you because, you see, they want to make money. And like I tell you, them pharmaceuticals that come on your television and tell you about all these different products that they have that will help you get out of whatever it is, but that this is what may happen to you, you better off with what you got. And you don't have to pay to have your heart stop. And all the other things. See, we have to become sophisticated in the world that we're living in right now. The devil doesn't lie. The devil confuses. The devil give you 1/4 truth and 3/4 lie. And you get so caught up in the 1/4 truth that you don't realize 3/4 is a lie. The devil doesn't lie. And what these folk are doing out here, reciprocity, what goes around is going to come around. But I also realize that homeschooling, as wonderful as it is, because I work with homeschoolers, developing homeschooling networks. There are so many different ways that you can do what you have to do. I encourage people to go to Kamali Academy. They have a lot of great curriculum materials. Queen Thais. With the Liberated Minds, you know, from roots to shoots. You can go to black homeschoolers. You can go to African American homeschoolers. You can go to different bookstores that have books for children. When I put my children in school, I told them, I'm your first teacher. I was their first teacher from when they were born. I was there working with them. My grandson, and I will eventually with my granddaughter when she comes of age. I already bought her a book. In terms of numbers of things. But you see, my concept is that we are our children's first teachers. I sent them to school to socialize. I didn't send them to school to learn. I taught them. Their mother taught them. It's not that they didn't learn something in school, but I wanted them there to learn how to socialize so that they could live in a world where they know how to interact with varying kinds of people. But I also realize that everybody cannot homeschool their children, and it's a challenge in terms of schools that by law you don't have to vaccinate. And if now they're getting to the point where you can't do it religion, they're really on you now. So we all have to make decisions as to what we're going to do. We're in a very interesting place in our society right now. Urugu has met his match. Please, my sister.
Just to tell you a little bit more, Ziax is an in-person homeschooling. So it's a community of parents who want to homeschool their children, and there's a space you could take your child in. So if you want to homeschool your child in the morning time and then give yourself a break, you can drop them off as a part-time homeschooler in the community, and this goes from K to 12th grade.
Thank you so much.
Okay, yeah, take that into consideration, because that along with Photoshop is a good idea.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Can I say one more thing?
Please, brother.
You were saying about your leg. So I wanted to add these 3 values, because we have our medicine. I'm always preaching, or I'm always speaking that we have the medicine within us. So there's a couple of yoga techniques that if you do sit like this 3 times, and you lay down on the floor, you put your chin, and you put your elbows underneath and your hands underneath your legs. You stay there for 60 seconds. It'll take away any carpal tunnel, any arthritis, and you do it 2 times a day, 1 time a day. And also, when you go to rest or you rise up in the morning or in the rise, you breathe 50 hot breaths, like, And trust me, you might feel like you're gonna pass out, but you're not. You're giving your blood oxygen, and the blood needs oxygen for it to flow, for it to heal. So then you also do a meditation as well before you take liftoff. But you stretch the body, because we're always like in the rat race. So we're always speeding, we're always going fast. But if you take that time before you rise, before you rest at night, your body is able to heal better. So if you stretch the body, you hold yourself out, take 15, 10 minutes, whatever stretches you need, do the breaths, then do the meditation. On the rise, meditation, breaths, then stretch. You'll feel such a big difference between your legs, within your veins and your cardiovascular system, that it heals you energetically alone just by doing those, things on the rise and at nighttime. It's helped me. So
Yeah, thank you. Brother, brother, I want to ask you a question. That piece that you said that you put your hands out like this?
I'll show you. You want me to show it?
Well, what I want to ask you is does it make a difference if you do it on a rug or on a floor?
I'll tell you like this, and this is just speaking from anyone. When you do it on the rug, you know what you're doing, right, guys? You taking the easy way out. But if you do it with oil, like you going to the bowling alley, now that's the way you want to do it, whether it's wood, concrete, or whatever, but not concrete, wood, because wood travels through the soul. The spirit travels through the soul. I don't know if you guys know that. The trees that we breathe, that gives us oxygen, and carbon monoxide. So when you better touching the wood, now you healing those pressure points, because when you go get a massage, you don't realize you're only healing the pain. You won't be back in there next week. But there's called pressure point technology now, that when you actually use the meridian points, like my aunt, when we have our celestial, we still have that in our body. So when we touch those pressure points and do it once a week, we alleviate the pain, and it doesn't come back to us if we keep on pressing the pressure points. So the same thing, when the wood and our bones are touching the floor, it's alleviating the pain more, say, if you do it on a flat surface. But that's not for everybody until you get there. But when you do get there, the flat surface on a wood floor is preferable.
Okay.
You could still do the mat, but preferably you want to do it, on a nice flat surface.
Okay, you answered my question, brother.
No problem.
Appreciate it. Okay? It's all good?
All kinds of love.
Thank you, bro.
Baba!
Thank you, bro.
My brother, Mr. G, you got the microphone, brother. Thank you, family. All power to the people.
Thank you guys for coming out, Brother Kaba. Thank you, brother. Dream come
Yes.
true having you
Yes,
here, man.
no doubt, brother. No doubt. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Queen. And thank for everybody for coming out. Brother Kaba has some stuff with his great grandson right there, so make sure we show him some love and I gotta get some of that oil.
Yes, man. No doubt. No doubt. All right.
All right, brother.
Good, brother. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you.
Yes, man. And don't forget Astra Kwesi and his wife Marira coming through here next week.
You guys have the
You got the flyer there?
on your TFP.
Don't forget to have them sign the.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I gotta get a picture of you and Victor too.
Oh, yeah. That's nice, man.
You like that, right?
Yes, man. Do you have the pen that I'm going to sign it with?
Sir, I'm gonna get it.
Okay.
Right now.
Brother Victor.
How you doing?
I'm excellent, brother. How you doing?
Good.
Yes, man. Everything's good with you?
Hell yeah.
All right, brother. Glad to hear
Proud
that.
of you, man.
Yes,
For
man.
everything you do for the community.
Yes, no doubt. I appreciate you, brother, and you also.
Much love.
Keep doing what you're doing, brother.
Do it.
All right, no doubt. All right.
Like it?
I like it, man. I like it. I like that picture.